Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for ToxTime. Presenting with me today, we have Erin Murray, our Business Development Manager. We have Carissa Little, our Account Manager, and myself, Kiabeth Santos, the Newborn Team Supervisor. We work with hospitals all across the country to improve their newborn drug testing programs. If you are new with us today, let me tell you a little bit about what ToxTime is. ToxTime is where we meet once a quarter and we discuss contemporary topics in forensic toxicology. Today's topic of the day is drug trends and concerns regarding neonatal abstinence syndrome. We have partnered with many hospitals throughout the United States to provide newborn drug testing services, and as such, we continue to stay current with where the challenges are, as well as with what is working. We are looking forward to today's discussion. And with that, I will pass it off to Erin. Erin, if you can go over today's agenda, please.
So much, Kiabeth. Hello, everybody. So today we will be sharing some very insightful information regarding NAS, which is neonatal abstinence syndrome. First, we will start with information on what NAS is and the withdrawal symptoms in the neonates. Next, we will see a video of a newborn going through those withdrawal symptoms, and then Kiabeth will discuss her experience at Lily's Place, which is an organization in West Virginia that provides care to infants with NAS. And she will also discuss the importance of breaking that stigma with NAS. Then Carissa will discuss the onset of specific drug withdrawals, how hospitals deal with NAS in regards to therapeutic handling, and she'll go over a review of umbilical cord tissue testing as a backup testing for NAS. And last, Kiabeth will discuss the market change on NAS. So here's Carissa with the housekeeping rules for today's ToxTime.
Thanks, Erin. Now let's get started with the housekeeping rules. Please submit any questions that you may have in the Q&A section at any time during the session. At the end of the session, we will open up the platform to answer any questions that you may have submitted. Now, I know that there's a lot of information that will be given out today, so we'll be sending a recording to all attendees to view for future use. Also, all of the resources referenced will be made available upon request post-webinar. Now that we are done, I'll pass it back to Erin to jump right into our great discussion, which I'm so excited to talk about drugs of concern and NAS.
Thank you, Carissa. Let's go ahead and get started. So we understand that most of you know what neonatal abstinence syndrome is, but we want to share with the new attendees today and just give a brief overview of NAS. So NAS is a condition that is caused when a newborn baby withdraws from certain drugs that he or she is exposed to in utero. Drugs are passed on to the baby through the placenta, and the baby becomes dependent on the drug. If the mother continues to use the drugs during the pregnancy, the baby will be dependent on the drug at birth. Because the baby is no longer receiving the drug through the placenta after birth, withdrawal symptoms may occur as the drug is slowly cleared from the baby's system. Here at USDTL, we have worked diligently to stay on top of this growing problem of NAS. Over the course of the years, we have grown our drug panels to keep the littlest patients and your staff at your hospitals in mind. So symptoms of NAS can vary depending on the type of drug that was used, the last time it was used, and whether the baby is full term or premature. According to one of our previous scientific writers, symptoms could be different for each baby, but here are the most common symptoms of neonatal abstinence syndrome. Symptoms could include a premature birth or a low birth weight. The infant could have tremors or trembling. There could be too much crying or even high-pitched crying. In addition, there could be tight muscle tone and stiff limbs. GI problems could include diarrhea, or the baby could be vomiting. Too much yawning, a stuffy nose, excess sneezing, fevers, or unstable temperatures are also signs of NAS. Next, we will share a short video of an infant that is experiencing neonatal abstinence syndrome. It doesn't have any sound, so please don't turn your computers up. Also, keep in mind that this video may be difficult for some of you to watch.
Wow, what a video to watch. It's so sad. I know, Erin, when you recently saw that video, you told me it made you tear up, and I could imagine, and especially our audience today who's joining us, who experiences on a day-to-day basis, I could imagine what you go through. Seeing this video brought me back to Lily's Place, which is an infant recovery center. Lily's Place opened its doors back in October 14 as the first neonatal abstinence syndrome center in the United States. They are located in Huntington, West Virginia. When I first started working at USDTL years ago, I read a lot about NAS babies. I read, not only did I read about it, I saw about it in the news. When hospital staff would call into the lab, I would hear the babies crying in the background. But it was a totally different experience when I had the opportunity to visit Lily's Place back in 2015. Our leaders here at USDTL sent myself and another coworker to Lily's Place to volunteer. They are a non-for-profit organization. So when we went, we donated diapers, wipes, and other stuff that they did need for their organization. I remember when I first approached Lily's Place, it was in a rural industrial area. And as we pulled up to Lily's Place, I remember seeing the baby on the lily pad. And when I walked into this organization, it forever changed me. It really humbled me, I must say. When I went into Lily's Place and was provided a tour, I remember seeing a young lady. She was probably in her early 20s, had a Mountain Dew on her hand, was lean and tall, and she was actually missing some teeth in her mouth. And one of the stakeholders from the organization spoke to me and said, "You see that young lady over there? Let me tell you a little bit more of her story." She mentioned to me that that young lady was there to visit her baby that was in the infant recovery center. And she mentioned to me that she was exposed to heroin at a very young age, roughly around the age of 12 years old. And she lived somewhere in the Indian reserves in around West Virginia, and her mom had initially started using heroin. And then, of course, she passed it on to her daughter, and it's just a vicious cycle in their family that no one was able to break that chain of addiction. So here we are, where this young lady was addicted to heroin, her babies were drawing from heroin, and now everyone involved is trying to look at better outcomes for the mom and the baby. They were looking to send the mom to a recovery center, which she agreed upon to go to Tennessee. And then, of course, once she would get the help she needed, she could be there and be very hands-on with her child. That's to say that it's always so important to remember that we never know the story that these moms are undergoing. And that is where I must say my humbling moment came from. Because when I first started working here at USDTL, as me being a mom, I would always say, why would a mom do such a thing? I could never do such a thing to my child. And initially, I didn't understand until I was exposed to this a lot more. I was like, wow, we don't know their stories. And it's so important for us not to judge these moms and break that stigma that's out there. And I know when we go to a lot of these conferences, I know Carissa and Erin could relate, when we do hear about this in the field and when we sit in sessions, it's become more and more popular that they are trying to educate healthcare workers on breaking the stigma in these conferences, because a lot of these moms, they're afraid to speak up and say, hey, I have a problem, I need help. I really want to get better, but they're afraid that they're going to have fingers pointed at them. They're afraid that their baby's going to be taken away from them. And when I was at Lily's place, they mentioned to me, Kiabeth, our goal here is to keep these moms and babies together. And that's when everything really hit home for me of why we do what we do here at USDTL, because here at USDTL, we have that similar goal. We want to keep these moms and babies together. And this is our time to be a voice for these littlest patients that are unable to speak for themselves. So oftentimes here at USDTL, we get questions because we are a forensic toxicology lab. So all of our newborn specimens that are processed into our lab operate via chain of custody. And there are quite a good amount of healthcare workers that understand that, but then there's a few that as soon as they hear chain of custody, forensic testing, they get scared and they say, no, we're not trying to, take the baby away from the mom. And I'm here in front of you today to tell you that that is not our goal by no means at all. Our goal is to keep these moms and babies together. And why is that? With these forensic specimens, the way they're held as once in a lifetime specimens. With a clinical test, you can always go back and recollect it if something goes wrong. If a urine specimen went wrong, you could go back, recollect it. Blood, go draw some more blood. But when we're looking at these newborn specimens, once the meconium is gone, it's gone. Once the umbilical cord tissue is gone, it's gone. There's no way we can go back and recollect it once it's gone. So this is our time to really be a voice for them. So as mentioned, we can't go back and recollect it. And our goal here is to provide early intervention for these moms and babies with our results that we do provide. And with chain of custody, it is so simple. I know, Carissa, you talk about this all the time. You say it takes about 2 minutes to collect. With chain of custody, I know we will be having a webinar later on this year on chain of custody, so stay tuned. But with chain of custody, it's just so simple. It's one chain of custody form, you affix the medical record sticker on it, specify the drug panel you want on the neonate, sign, date. There's a tamper evidency on the bottom, initial date, place it over the specimen container, and you're done. And this improves the overall integrity of the specimen, protects the hospital from any sort of issues long-term, protects the mom and the baby. And in the end of the day, our goal is to say, this specimen result is indeed this baby's, and the mom could entrust in those results as well. And there's a win-win for everyone involved. When I did visit Lily's place, they shared with me the importance of having a specimen that has a far look-back window to see what mom was exposed to. Their hospital that's fairly close to them, Cabell Huntington Hospital, which has a lot of their transfer babies to Lily's place, tests the umbilical cord tissue specimens for in utero drug exposure, which does go back the last 20 weeks of pregnancy. It has really gained popularity over the years since we developed it back in 2007, because you can always collect it, save it, and show the neonates show signs of withdrawal, hours or days later, you have it as a backup. So the onset of drug withdrawal is highly variable. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Carissa so she could shed some light on this topic.
Thank you so much, Kiabeth, with sharing your story and shedding some light on the stigma that these moms, do face. And before we move forward with the onset, I just remember starting at USDTL, and all of the employees and the staff are very passionate in wanting to go with the mission in protecting and enriching lives. And I remember Kiabeth sharing me that story of Lily's place, and I just can't imagine just being in her shoes. So moving forward with the onset of symptoms. So they do vary. However, infants exposed to heroin or other short-acting opioids will typically show symptoms within the first 24 hours. So those exposed to methadone or buprenorphine, which are longer-acting opioids, would often present symptoms later than 72 hours, but usually within the first 4 days. So displaying here on the screen is the time of onset for NAS babies. So for diazepam, it's hours to weeks later. Alcohol is 3 to 12 hours. Heroin, it's 24 hours. Sedatives is 1 to 3 days. Methadone, it's 1 to 7 days. And opiates is the same, 1 to 7 days. And then for barbiturates, it's 1 to 14 days, which is a bit longer. So overall, when testing for the onset of withdrawal for NAS, it can take up to hours to several days later. That is why it is imperative to look at specific specimen options. So here at USDTL, we encourage our hospital clients to test for the umbilical cord, which has a look-back window for up to 20 weeks and can be stored as a backup. We emphasize the importance of collecting cords on every baby to make sure no babies are slipping through the cracks. So, this collection process, which was noted in a previous webinar of ours, is standardized umbilical cord tissue testing. So if the neonate does not meet criteria at birth, you can then store that specimen. And then if the neonate should show any onset of withdrawal hours to days later, you can then send it to our lab for testing. So here, this is one of the ways USDTL keeps up in the changing market of substance abuse. So we always look forward in receiving feedback from our audience about our educational webinars. Please take a moment and participate in this poll to help us tailor our webinars moving forward. All right, well, thank you so much for participating in that. And I'm looking forward to seeing those results later. Also, I would like to add, to help with NAS, healthcare professionals have suggested using non-pharmacological methods to help babies that have been exposed to drug exposure. I would like to share with the audience some of those non-pharmacological methods. So here on the screen, you can see the first method is the Eat, Sleep, Console. So the Eat, Sleep, Console model monitors how the baby is behaving to determine whether the baby should be transitioned to a drug protocol and to keep baby and mother together. Specifically, the Eat, Sleep, Console model looks at A, eating, is the baby feeding normally? B, sleep, is the baby able to sleep? C, console, can the baby be consoled within 10 minutes of crying? The second approach is therapeutic handling. So this approach is utilized since the NAS symptoms can cause overstimulation in the newborn, in which environmental and behavioral approaches help maximize the infant's comfort. The therapeutic methods include reducing stimuli, swaddling and vertical rocking the baby, and then feeding. So when it comes to feeding, always feed in a calm and quiet environment. The last approach is kangaroo care. So kangaroo care is a method of holding a baby that involves skin-to-skin contact. As you can see here on the screen, the baby, who is typically naked except for a diaper, is placed in an upright position against the mother's bare chest. So now that I've given an overview of the onset of drug withdrawals and the non-pharmacological approaches for caring for baby, I will pass it off to Kiabeth to discuss with our audience the market change with NAS.
Thank you so much, Carissa, for going over that great overview. When we're in the field, we hear a lot about non-pharmacological care. It's really gained popularity throughout the United States, and I'm interested to see where else this goes. I know back in Lily's place, when I initially went there, they were very big on having low lighting, because a lot of lighting, especially, that's why they were trying to take the babies away from the NICU, because all the lighting really irritates these babies, so which is why it's so important. So again, Carissa, thank you so much for going through that overview. So today in our country, we're facing a drug epidemic, and it's continued to grow during the pandemic. We can see it has not gone anywhere. We see there has been a spike in overdose deaths, and this could be due to social isolation, increased mental health distress, and many other variables. With the drug epidemic our country is facing and the drastic changes in the substance abuse landscape, it has been so important for us here at USDTL to stay abreast of the market demand and continue to be innovative. Our goal is always to keep our hospital staff, mom, and the neonate in mind to obtain the best outcomes based off our results. We are actually one of the few laboratories with an in-house research and development department, which is what helps USDTL remain a leader in newborn toxicology, because we are able to be flexible and adapt to drug trends as they do come along. So we are going to go ahead and share on the screen. an infographic from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And you will see here that every 15 minutes, a baby is born suffering from opioid withdrawal. And the opioid withdrawal, there has been literally a spike in the hospital cost for these babies. And we continue to see that it continues to increase, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately. So with that, here at USDTL, we've made it very important to continue to be innovative and also keep our turnaround time very competitive. You're looking at a turnaround time of results of next business day for negatives, an additional 2 business days for specimens that require additional testing. And we're going to pull up here on the screen a graphic showing how we've continued to be innovative here in the field. Here at USDTL, we were the first lab to offer the 5-drug panel meconium testing. Shortly after, in 1999, we developed fatty acid ethyl esters, which is an alcohol biomarker in meconium. In 2007, we developed umbilical cord tissue testing. And in 2013, we developed meconin, which is a heroin biomarker. In 2019, we developed fentanyl and meconium. And of course, in 2020, we added on kratom and gabapentin in our umbilical cord tissue specimens. So oftentimes we get a lot of questions about specimen results. And one of the most common questions we often get that I can reflect on, I know Carissa, you and I just had a conversation with one of our clients about a month ago. And when the client called in, she recently started sending to USDTL. And she said, you know, we got our result back. It was negative, but the baby's withdrawing. But mom may have been exposed to fentanyl when she was using heroin. When we looked at the test she was ordering, her test did not include fentanyl for testing. So then, of course, if you're not testing for it, you're not going to get it on your result. So this is really important, and I would like to stress it today that, as you can see, the market continues to change. We continue to launch new drugs that are being heavily abused in the field. So it's important to always stay up to date with what's trending and reevaluate the drug panels that you are testing for, because again, you need to add it to your drug panels so that you can find it and see what the babies were exposed to. Identifying exposure overall as soon as possible allows for better outcomes. So USDTL, as mentioned, we recently developed gabapentin. Gabapentin is widely used in adults and children for partial seizures and neuropathic pain syndromes. And it's been abused to enhance the heroin high. We continue to see this abused in the field. I know back in 2015, when I visited Lily's place, that was the first time I heard about gabapentin. And one of the babies that I had seen was withdrawing from heroin and gabapentin. And I remember seeing the baby's eyes rolling back and forth. And I was like, oh my gosh. Not only West Virginia were we seeing that, but we were also seeing it in Tennessee. And since then, it's trickled in various other states. So if you're not seeing it in your area now, it may possibly eventually hit your area. It's only a matter of time. And then we also have kratom, which I just spoke about. Kratom is a legal, widely available herbal supplement. I know here in the Northwest suburbs where I live, we're starting to see kratom shops everywhere. And its abuse is increasing throughout the United States. But I would like to inform you that based off studies, regular users of kratom can develop a dependence, and its discontinuation can result in a dose-dependent abstinence syndrome similar to opioid withdrawal. Kratom use in pregnancy and its effects on the developing fetus and newborn are largely unknown. There is a lack of literature to help guide the providers in management of NAS in the kratom-exposed infant. But what we do know is that exposure to kratom produces similar opioid-like withdrawal symptoms. I know here at USDTL, our team is looking to work with other healthcare professionals to look into more studies on kratom. So stay tuned to see what else we may have for you regarding this matter. So now that we've discussed gabapentin and kratom, let's go ahead and talk about fentanyl. Fentanyl has been a growing problem for a few years already. Initially, I heard that it was heroin being laced with fentanyl. Now we're hearing in the field methamphetamine is laced with fentanyl. Cocaine now is also laced with fentanyl. And I just had a conversation about a month ago. I mean, this was the first time I heard about it, but it's good for us to know about this, is that Oxycontin was also laced with fentanyl. So we continue to see this be a growing problem. A lot of the drug dealers are starting to lace their drugs with fentanyl. So again, if you're not testing for it, I would highly encourage you to reevaluate the drug that you are testing for and consider adding this one on as well. So a lot of the questions we usually get in the field is with fentanyl is, well, mom is sometimes prescribed fentanyl in labor and delivery. We don't want to obtain a result and then not know the difference between it being illicit usage or the pharmaceutical grade fentanyl. So we're going to share here on the screen for you our analytes that we test for in fentanyl. And here you can see that our fentanyl analytes are very expanded. Pharmaceutical grade fentanyl, based off of what our toxicologists have said in-house, does not contain acetylfentanyl. In the absence of acetylfentanyl and acetonorfentanyl, we will need to accept administration of fentanyl during labor and delivery as a reasonable explanation for a positive fentanyl umbilical cord tissue result. So with that, now that we've gone over the common analytes and fentanyl testing, we would like to share with you a chart of fentanyl and how it's continued to grow during the COVID-19 pandemic and the spike in drug overdose deaths we have seen. We can see here that it's continued to increase. And in the midst of the pandemic, again, it has not gone anywhere. It's continuing to be a problem. So with that, we're always very interested to see what you're seeing in the field, and we are going to go ahead and share a poll with you today. We ask if you could kindly participate in the poll and let us know, are you seeing an increase of exposure in your area for any of these drugs? Thank you so much. While you're participating in the poll, I would like to share with you what we have, that we have another ToxTime webinar entitled Nails versus Hair, What's the Difference? This will be scheduled for June 24th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. More details to come. We encourage you to participate in our end of webinar survey and share with us other topics you would like to hear. So now let's check on our results and see what we received from our audience. Wow, we see here that 62% of our audience has seen fentanyl, 12% kratom, gabapentin 15%, 15% also stated all of the above, and we have about 32% that mentioned we don't test for these drugs. I'm not surprised at all with the 62% of the fentanyl, and of course, kratom and gabapentin is slowly continuing to grow, so we're starting to see it hit more and more regions. So again, if you're not seeing it in your area, just keep that in mind that you should still consider adding it because it's probably a matter of time before it hits your area eventually. And for those of you that are not testing for any of these drugs, again, I would highly encourage you to reconsider adding this to your panels. And that's why the team in front of you is here today. We're here. If you're our existing client joining us today, Carissa can get you started with upgrading your panels. Or if you're new with us today, reach out to Erin and I, and we'll be more than happy to assist you in getting this started. So you guys, we learned a lot of information today so far, and I will pass it off to Erin. Erin, if you could sum up today what we learned.
Thank you, Kiabeth. You shared some really good information. So today we have learned how NAS has grown throughout the nation, and we have presented information from scientific data. USDTL has kept up with the studies on the drug abuse landscape. We have discussed the withdrawal symptoms and the difference in the onset of withdrawals with different drugs when babies have been exposed to them. Umbilical cord tissue testing has been shown to have a huge insight into what types of drugs a mother has ingested during her pregnancy, if any. USDTL was the first lab to create umbilical cord tissue testing back in 2007. This type of testing has been shown to be extremely effective when drugs are ingested because they are spread homogenously throughout the cord and there is less room for error. We have seen the market change in NAS and how those numbers have increased over many years. We know that the hospitals are focusing on COVID and making that a priority. However, the tiniest patients at your hospitals are still being affected by the opioid epidemic. That is what USDTL is here for, to help with the newborn drug testing, to obtain better outcomes for the mothers, babies, and the staff at your hospitals.
Subscribe to our channel to see more videos like this.